We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest on the interview series, Aimee Slade. She's the head of people operations at Vanilla. Aimee, thank you so much for being on the show. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yes, so thanks for having me. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And when I was young, I wanted to be the first female president of the United States, which is sad that now here I am many, many years later, and that could still be possible. But that was definitely my dream when I was a little kid, and I had it posters all over and pictures of what it would look like, and I would draw what I would be like in the White House, and that was important to me.
I love that. I also hope that we see that in our lifetime, and I'm confident that we will. Fast forward to today, it's in the name of our interview series and something that you definitely help to create and lead as well at Vanilla. Company culture, it's always changing, it's dynamic as people join the team, as folks leave. When you think about kind of measuring company culture, what are qualitative and quantitative ways you think about doing that?
Yeah, good question. I think so much of company culture is really having a good pulse on how people are thinking and feeling at any point. I think it's really important for my team, and I stress this with them, is that we are there to listen and ask the right questions. So what we are hearing is how we make change within our organization. And so that happens from the point that someone comes into the organization and they are onboarded, all the way to the point where they leave. And so if we are gathering feedback, if we are listening to the small ways they are trying to communicate, it might not even be very clear. Like, hi, I need you to know that I need this, but it's seen in their behavior. It's seen in the way they communicate in Slack or via email. If you're paying attention to those things, you start to really recognize where the needs are, and we need to take action on that. So I think those are some of, I wouldn't say that it's just straight sending out surveys all the time. You have to take that. That's important, pulse surveys, engagement surveys, but then also you're going to hear things just by interactions. We always have to be involved in the lives of our team members, just in small ways of communication in order to really hear what they have to say. It's not just going to come from anything official, I would say.
Yeah, there's not that one size fits all approach where everything is encapsulated in one pulse survey or one check-in, really having those multiple ways of meeting people where they are too, to give that feedback and to really understand what they're saying is really important. Digging in a little bit deeper as well, what role do you see really the employee voice or voices, I should say, playing in your people, talent, and culture strategy overall?
Yeah, it plays a huge role. We are a growing organization. So over the last year, I think we have added about 70 employees to our team, which is a lot considering before then there were about a dozen. So it's been a very busy 9 months for us. And so it's very easy in those early stages to say, oh yeah, we're listening to everybody, right? Because there's 10 of you or 12 of you or even 20. So those conversations are easy. But as you grow, it can be unfortunately easy to lose the voice of the employees, but it plays such a huge role, especially as things change so rapidly. And so it's important for us to be listening to those voices, and not just in one way. As you were saying, it's not a one size fits all approach. We have to be in tune with the management. We have to be in tune with ways of even our what am I trying to say? Not necessarily just our employees, but even our vendors and how they're interacting with everyone, because that tells you what's going on within the organization, right? That tells you how closely you're in tune and they are connecting with your mission, vision, and values. And for us, that's really important, because anytime that we get away from that, anytime we get away from what our core values are and how we're communicating, the respect that you have for each other, the trust that's being built, you know that there's something broken there. And I think you have to hear that from everyone. So it's extremely important to hear those things. Those voices dictate everything that we do, from office space that we are acquiring, and how we are working remotely, what our manifesto is for how people come and show up to work every single day. That's really dictated by the people who work here. Not, it can't be a top-down approach, because that's, I think, when you do see the brokenness appear. So everything that we do here at Vanilla is crucial at hearing the employees and how they're going to interact with what we do. And we even get feedback from interviews early on before people are coming on. Why did you choose Vanilla? Why are you interviewing? What's interesting to you? What did you like or not like through the interviewing process? And even that has evolved how we interview, how we approach candidates coming into Vanilla, because I think just from that initial conversation, it is changing how they interact with your company, whether they join or not. That the way that you approach that is going to dictate how they come into the company if they end up doing that. And so I think all of that is really important to making sure that their voices are heard.
Absolutely. And it really speaks to the employer brand of Vanilla as well. And anyone who comes into contact with someone who's worked there, an alumni of the organization, or someone who's interviewed with you as well. And I think that's a really good example of just like iterating on the candidate experience, really taking that feedback from candidates, and then fast forward to employees as well. And that is a lot of growth within an organization too, with 70 new folks joining, and I'm sure many to come in the future. Can you share an example of how kind of that employee feedback has informed a change or a new policy program or initiative? And this can be anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think specifically when it comes to our onboarding, we've taken a lot of feedback from that. And we hear oftentimes when people come into the organization, oh, the first week of onboarding is so tough. It's rough, it's hard, it's exhausting. And so we let's say last December or so, when we knew we were going to be hiring significantly, we sat down and said, okay, what do other companies do? What are we doing today, and how are we going to evolve that? So that's not the case when someone comes in that said, oh, it was really hard. It made, it was confusing. I didn't feel connected. So how do we do the opposite of that? And so hearing that feedback and knowing that was something that was going to be a challenge, especially at scaling, at the rate we were going to scale, we needed to think about that and be very intentional about every step of that process, especially being a remote company, right? You don't have someone that's there that you can just ask a question to. So how can we anticipate those questions and those needs? So one of the things that we started doing, as an example, is having a first day touch base, not just with the manager, but with our people operations team, and making sure that we have a 30-minute meeting where, after you've had that initial email of what to do and how to onboard and start your computer, you get to a place very quickly to ask questions. You can get that initial feedback and see a friendly face that you may not have to connect you to the organization. We also started a buddy program. We started that this year just because, again, they don't know, someone new doesn't always want to go to their manager. They don't want to go to someone that they feel like they're bothering, someone else on their team that might be busy. So we allowed them to have just one connection point that they said, this is your person. This is the person for the first 30 days. You have anything that you have a question about, go to them. You don't know if you should send an email or a Slack in this case. You don't know where to find benefits. Like, they will be your person. And even if they don't know the answer, they will direct you in the right place. So those were some of the things, even down to we were really hearing people after starting that, well, I didn't really know what to expect when I was starting. So now we send an email 1 week before to just says, here's what to expect on your first day and your first week. Those little things make it so much easier for someone to adapt to a totally new role and culture. And they get to put those fears and those anxieties away because they have all the answers in front of them. And so those are just some of the ways that we've tried to meet people where they are, and especially make them feel comfortable in a remote environment when they're starting a new job. Because as we all know, as any of us that have done that, it's pretty scary. It's very anxiety provoking.
Yes, and anything you can do to lessen the anxiety or remove those barriers, access to information, make sure someone feels like they belong from day one or day -1, from when they accept the offer to their first day. It's really critical as well, and it's how they experience Vanilla and their team, and it really speaks to, I belong here as well, and I want to ensure others belong too, and meeting people where they are. Everybody is different. I would love to talk about a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it's at the center of decision making and always top of mind. How is that manifesting at Vanilla as well?
Yeah, that was something early days of us when there were really just five of us starting this company. That was really intentional and important to us. Many of us necessarily didn't come from the startup world or corporate world, and so had different backgrounds and wanted to say that we want to embrace that. We didn't come from a traditional space where now we are the head of product or the head of people operations, and that means there are a lot of people out there also that may not come from this traditional standpoint, but can still do an amazing job. And we want to embrace that and be able to give them opportunities where you might not otherwise see that from a resume. And so how do we go about doing that? And so there were the I think easy conversations as far as it's very important to us to have as close to a 50-50 male to female ratio as possible early on, and also making sure that we recognize everyone's differences and strengths in that. So we did that even just in recruiting. We would tell our recruiters when we are interviewing, we want to see, especially from an engineering side where you don't see it as much, we want to see just as many females that we were interviewing as males. Please give us that. We want to make sure that we are getting a diverse population from backgrounds and experience, and please bring that to us. And that starts there. And ultimately, as we all know, you go with the best candidate, but you only know if you have the best candidate if you've actually looked at the entire pool and not just a sect of that pool. And so that was really important to us. And that's something we've continued on. And it's a message to our recruiters and then to our hiring managers, that that's extremely important to us and something that we're focused on. But then even from another standpoint, one of the things that we were noticing as a company that was coming up through COVID is that women were leaving the workforce in rapid amounts. And so how can we, but there's a lot of talent out there that is not being captured, but they need a different schedule. Oftentimes women are leaving the workforce because they are mothers, but because they're caretakers for their children. And so how can we create a space that allows them to do both if they want to? And so we created part-time positions for that allowed for these roles to have flexible schedules, be able to do the work when they could do the work and not have to do a strict 40-hour 9-to-5 job, allowing them to come in, do the work that they need to do, and also care for their family as needed. And in a time, not just as needed, but as appropriate. Not just when you can fit it in and not just from your lunch hour from 12 to 1, but if it's best for you and you need to be with your family earlier in the day, work later in the evening or vice versa, or break that up in several hour chunks. We're not going to dictate that for them. And that's worked out really, really well. And we've been able to employ several women who have left the workforce because of that and been able to come back because they wanted to and chose to. So that was really important. And then one other area that we did is we also wanted to, especially from the engineering, I mentioned that as well. Oftentimes we are seeing a lot of people coming out of boot camps without experience, but not getting hired. Maybe they came from a totally different industry. We've seen attorneys, we've seen those that have worked in retail, we've seen people who are in finance come into an engineering space, but really be unable to get that experience. They need to get a full-time job. So we created some differing positions, we call them associates, where someone can come in that doesn't have that direct experience, but they have work experience. They're not a brand new grad, and be able to come and work with us for 6 months, learn this industry, get experience for their resumes, and hopefully either get a position with us or elsewhere so that they have that. It's not a blocker because they don't have any experience. And we've seen that open up that applicant pool so much more than we've seen before, especially when it comes to minorities that are applying. They are able to do that where they really didn't have experience or didn't have that ability elsewhere. And so we've been very proud of those efforts at this point.
Yeah, opening up those opportunities and making sure there are entry points to folks who are rejoining the workforce. You mentioned the part-time roles as well, and really looking at an intentional pipeline for folks who are joining Vanilla too. And that really speaks to flexibility, which at the end of the day is also beneficial for everyone as well at the organization. And also trust, I think, are key pieces of successful workplaces. How else do you see flexibility and trust really kind of in practice at the organization?
Oh, absolutely. I think trust is key and critical. Something that we talk about, that we lead with. And one of our core values is integrity. And so really giving everyone the freedom to say, I know what my job is. I'm here to be trusted to do that job, and we're not here to micromanage that job in any way. And so that may mean varying schedules. That may mean different ways that you do engage with your job and with your team, and that's okay. And we're going to embrace that until it becomes a problem. Instead of leading with distrust, if we lead with trust and allow everyone to show up and meet those needs, we've seen that that's been the case. Asynchronous communication is one of the things that we've done from the beginning, and just said, Slack is not a tool for immediate communication. Email is not a tool that expects a response. And so and I think with that, if you have that type of culture that says, okay, whether that's the CEO slacking you or just a teammate, that if you're expected to respond within 30 seconds to 2 minutes, it becomes more about the amount of time that someone is in their seat than it is the quality of work that they're doing. And so we've tried to make that a really important practice, that communication is important, but it doesn't mean that you're expected to respond at any point. Another thing that we have felt is really important with that trust is deep work. We talk a lot about deep work at Vanilla, and encouraging people to block it off on their calendars. I have these 2 hours that I am going to focus on my work. I am not going to be responding. I'm not checking emails. I'm not being torn in 10 different directions. I'm just here to do the work that I need to do. And we encourage everyone to do that. And by making it visible on calendars or even on your Slack status, it's allowed people to respect that space as well, and really give people the space to do the work that they need to do, because we all know that we're being pulled in so many directions throughout the day, and that's really hard, especially when you have things that are very detailed to do, that require intense focus, and just creativity. Creativity isn't, you don't have creativity when you are looking and multitasking in so many different areas. So I think giving people the space to do that allows us, again, to continue to lead with trust. And that shows in people's work. Of course, there's always the abuse that could come with that, right? The fear in everyone's minds, oh, well, they're going to block off 2 hours and go to the pool, or they're going to block off 2 hours on their calendar and watch TV. Yeah, that may happen, but ultimately you'll end up seeing that in what they produce. And so if we focus on that and say it's really about ultimate results, instead of what we like to say is instead of butts and seats, we will see those results, and we really have. And I think that's been a great thing. And everyone also takes that level of responsibility very seriously, because you don't want to lose it. Right. And we hear that a lot from our employees that come, like, wow, it just feels very different. It feels like we have a little bit of breath to be trusted to do what we need to do. And that's ultimately what they want to do, is just do the job they were hired for. Of course, there's potential concern in every scenario, right? But if you manage to that and you pay attention to those things, it really becomes a conversation. And we found that those conversations end up equaling positive results.
And if you're focused on outcomes and really understanding what that is, you do understand those rules of communication and effective communication as well. An outcome is not responding to a Slack message in 2 seconds flat, and it's not really making sure that you are always on 24/7 as well. It's recognizing and empowering folks to do their best work, integrate deep work, so you're not in back-to-back 30-minute Zoom calls, and then at the end of the day you have all of these follow-ups as well. We also know that it's not about that responding in a set amount of time, meaningful connection that also happens over time, just like trust. How do you continue to build in strategic and but also organic moments of meaningful connection and carving out that space for folks at Vanilla?
Yeah, that's something that's been a challenge over being a fully remote company. And so we've tried to be intentional early on to create spaces and areas for people to connect outside of just work talk, because it's really easy to jump on your Zoom meeting and not even ask how people are doing. So we have several. Slack has been really crucial to us. We have many different channels that people can be part of, whether that's a music channel. We have a welcome to my home channel where people can post, hey, look at the new plant that I got, or I got a new puppy. We also have a women in tech group, which we have just discussions for that space and book clubs there, and just different ways that you can interact with people that aren't just about work. Another thing that we created early on was an employee magazine. It's a monthly employee magazine that's called The Scoop. And so we utilize that to highlight everything from new hires. You get a whole new hire spotlight page that asks them specific questions about what are your hobbies, where do you live, put pictures on there, to celebrating what everyone is doing throughout their days, whether that is going on vacation and sharing vacation photos, or how they are spending some of their health and wellness budget, which is a fringe benefit that we have, how they're utilizing that. As an example, I picked up pickleball, so I sent in some pictures about what it looks like to have to start pickleball. And those are really great ways that we see interaction, because suddenly you say, oh, wow, like that person really likes tea and I like tea, and I'm going to message them and let them know that. And suddenly you're connecting with someone that is in a completely different department. Probably don't share anything that you do on a work basis, but you share in these other things that are just about you personally. And so we try and put out as many things that we can in those ways, but not clogging up channels like our general channel, or the work channel, so that you know that you have a space that you can feel safe to do that, because that's what it's created for. And so that's been really helpful. We also have monthly donut chats and things like that, where you get connected with one other person in the month and spend 30 minutes just chatting with each other. But we've tried to be as intentional as we can with creating various spaces for people to do that, because as we know, we all don't work in the same way. And even I'll give one more just quick example. We had our first all company meeting this July, which was amazing, having 70 people in one location. And as we were planning it from our team, we thought, okay, what are the things that we're going to do to bring people together? And realizing and really recognizing our population of people, it wasn't just going to be, oh, well, should we just have everyone go to the bar at 10 o'clock at night? You know, that's very common corporate culture. Like everyone just goes and gets drinks. But we knew that we had a really high population of technical individuals that might not be their jam, or they're feeling uncomfortable. This is the first time they are going to meet all of these people, might not be as social. So what can we do to meet them where they are? And so instead of doing a bar, we opened up an arcade. There was an arcade on site. And so we rented it out for 2.5 hours and let our gamers game. And they had a great time, and that's how they interacted and met with each other and laughed, and figured out that, you know, some people like to play skee ball and some people like to shoot zombies, and that's okay. And it was just really thinking outside the box instead of doing what's easy and saying, okay, well, where are they? And let's meet them where they are and give them an opportunity to really shine. And that was so fun for us. Even, you know, we even bought some board games like Settlers of Catan and Catchphrase, so they could, you know, be in a little bit of a quieter setting, because for many of our remote employees who are choosing to be remote because they don't necessarily always want that social interaction, we don't want to overwhelm them and overstimulate them suddenly when you have an offsite. So again, I think it just comes back to like really thinking outside of those boxes and meeting people where they are.
Absolutely. And also opening up opportunities for people to opt in, for people to share, and really not mandating it in one specific way as well. So people do feel comfortable. I mean, someone might feel comfortable sharing, you know, what they do outside of work on day one. Some people maybe, you know, month two, which is totally fine as well. And I think we're seeing in terms of like flexibility, trust, as we were talking about, meeting people where we are, more conversations about that, outcomes-based workplaces as well. Is there any kind of innovation in the HR people talent culture space that we haven't discussed that you're most excited about, or why, or maybe something we could have touched on before?
Yeah, good question. I think that what I'm most excited for as we evolve as our company, and I don't know if this is fully answering your question, but for us, what I'm excited about is continuing to push those boundaries of what it means to be a remote company. And that means what we found from our offsite is that although we have all chosen to work remotely, and that's what we signed up for, we also want opportunities for connection. That was really clear. And from our post surveys from meeting together at the offsite, almost, I think it was 100% of respondents, which is really hard to get, said that they felt more connected to our company after being together. And that says a lot. That speaks volumes. So how can we create that? You can't always have a 70, 100, 200 person offsite. It's very expensive. It takes a lot of time and planning, but it does mean that we need to create opportunities to meet in person more often. And so we're looking at a lot of ways to do that. So having specific hubs, maybe potential co-working spaces where people can come, which is optional and flexible for them to come to also just empowering certain locations or certain departments to meet together and saying, you have a budget. This is how often you can utilize that budget and meet together and bring people together for whatever reason, whether that is just for dinner and mingling, or you have a project to do and you need to tackle through that together. Let's make space and put our budget towards that so that we can meet those needs. Because, and again, like you mentioned, not everyone is going to want to do that, and that's okay. But are we giving opportunities for those that do space to do that? And so I'm really excited to see how that evolves over time here as we're all learning in this new semi-post COVID stage, what that really looks like for everyone. And so I'm excited to see how that evolves. And if that means more permanent space where people can come in when needed, or we meet more often, I think that's going to really have an impact on how people come to work and show up to work every day.
Yeah, expanding the boundaries of what that means as well, and opening up the definition of remote work to work from home, work from, where you need to take care of someone, if you're a caretaker, work from, where you need to and where you can do your best work as well. Aimee, our time is ending together, but I want to pass the mic to you. If there's anything that I didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or underscoring anything we have discussed that you hope people take with them after hearing our conversation today.
I would just say that I love that these conversations are happening, that more and more people are showing up to the table, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is top of mind, that understanding the needs of a growing and changing employee base is valuable to a company, and really that the more you can focus on that, the more successful a company can be. And instead of, well, if we think about our bottom line, then everything will be successful. I just don't think that that's how we're going to operate going forward. We really have to care and meet our team members, our employees, our staff where they are, and give them opportunities to shine. And so I love that you're just having this conversation. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on the show, for sharing your experience in the field, and also all the things that you are doing at Vanilla. I enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Wonderful. Thank you.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.